Hi guys, so subsequent to my recent video about Tulwars, I've got a few more things to say. This is a different Tulwar from last time. This is an earlier period one with a Wootz blade on it, nice example. So first thing, I mentioned about the angle kept between the blade and the forearm and the wrist, encouraged by that disc on the back end of the hilt there, at the pommel. So an important factor to that, as well as keeping this this angle for these long sweeping sort of drawing cut blows, slashing blows, is that it uses very different muscles in the body. Okay, so whereas with a European sabre, you're cutting most of the time from the wrist. Okay, so you're actually using your forearm muscles really. Okay, a little bit of the upper arm, but mostly the forearm, and you're casting the point out and extending the blade. With the Tulwar, conversely, you're generally going to be using passing footwork because you have to, and you're actually using your upper arm and the big muscles on the back of your shoulder and back, and using your hip movements as well. And by putting your whole body into the blow, you get much more powerful and drawing cuts across the target. Very powerful cuts. Little bit shorter range, as I mentioned before, so you need to get closer to the target to give these cuts. But once they make contact, they're going to do a lot of damage compared to a European sword in general. Okay? So that's the first thing. Second thing I want to mention is about hilt size. So I mentioned that there was this idea that in the 19th century that maybe the hilts were small because Indian people had smaller hands. This is obviously not, generally speaking, true, but something I've observed is that the more, and this isn't always true, but the more high status the Tulwar, so the more expensive the sword, and you can look at this for yourself in museum collections, often the bigger the hilt gets, and we know that, you know, people with more money are, generally speaking, better fed, and generally more healthy, have healthier lifestyles, and, you know, on average tend to be a little bit bigger maybe than the common kind of people, working people. So I do have a kind of pet theory actually that Tulwar hilts are a bit bigger with the higher status weapons, but you can feel free to disagree with that, but you can look in museum collections for yourself. If you go to somewhere like the Wallace collection or the Victoria and Albert Museum and look at Indian sword hilts, if you compare it with basic Tulwars that you can buy easily in antique fairs and so on, the really expensive Tulwars tend to have slightly bigger hilts. And the third thing I wanted to mention is that although the method of using the Tulwar is completely different to using the European sabre, in actual fact, British officers in India in the 19th century, some of them did carry Tulwars. And if you look at period artwork, a surprising number of British officers carried these things because they were fantastic weapons. And in fact, in D.A. Kinsley's book, there's, you know, a couple of explicit examples of officers that it's mentioned that they carried Tulwars and knew how to use them. So there were Europeans in India in the 19th century and possibly in the 18th century who were learning Indian swordsmanship, and it was considered a completely separate and different art to European swordsmanship, because compared to the European swordsmanship of that time, it uses very different form of movement. It uses passing footwork, drawing cuts and so on, and in that sense it's more like medieval European swordsmanship. So a few more things to think about. Thank you.